and welcome to episode 3 of the P1, P2 podcast. I am your co-host, Matt.
And I'm your co-host, Seth.
And we're welcoming a new guest on the pod today. We have Will Armstrong from MeTempo. Will, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Where do we have you dialing in from today?
I'm dialing in from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, great spot. You and I are fellow New Yorkers, and I believe you may be a NYU alum as well.
I am. You got it.
Whoa. So we have a lot in common. I want to talk about that. Get to that in a bit, but first, maybe Seth, give Will an intro here. Tell us about Will.
Of course, I'm being a terrible friend here. I'm the one that invited Will. Will and I met in Whistler, snowboarding, or he's a skier, great skier. And we've just stayed in touch and ski together. And he's also working on his own app or business, which is called MeTempo, which you'll tell us a little about in a bit. And yeah, he lives in Brooklyn. I just saw him actually. And I'll let Will introduce himself more, but great guy. And I'm excited you agreed to come on the podcast.
I'll get just a quick little introduction and to build on what Seth said. We met in Whistler through some very close mutual friends, and we had a lot of fun riding around Whistler together, and have just kept in touch. And over the summer, we had these kind of really, really valuable accountability check-ins just to kind of see what we were both doing. And it's been great to just keep in touch as friends, but then also to know someone who's like working on their own thing to commiserate together and also to bounce ideas off and get feedback on what we're doing. So it's been cool. And so I'm excited to be here.
We're so grateful to have you here, and we will be doing some commiserating in a little bit. We're going to get to that when we talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we've had for our businesses and how those stack up against what maybe the ideal business is for a startup or a venture-backed startup, whatever you want to consider. So, but first, we're going to jump into our first segment of the day. This is the P1, P2 passport segment. We have some travel to talk about today, Seth. You are in a new place. I see you with a new background. Where are you at today, Seth?
I'm in Buenos Aires right now in Argentina. I got here on the 1st. I was in San Francisco for SF summer, so in October, and it was great, but I like to get out right before the time change and it starts to get a little colder and darker, but you can't quite ski yet in Tahoe or Whistler. And so why not go over to Argentina, practice my Spanish. It's beautiful, 75 degrees Fahrenheit out here, sunny most of the days. So, and still pretty cheap, not as cheap as it was last year, but still cheaper than San Francisco. So here I am practicing my Spanish and eating a lot of red meat.
Seth, I noticed you timed your leaving the United States really at an interesting moment. If you just happened to leave the country on November 1st, any
I don't think
details there?
I haven't been in the country for a federal election ever, actually. Never.
It's probably a safe
I
bet.
moved to the United States in 2012. I think like November 8th. I don't know. Around that time. And then I was in Mozambique. Yeah, I was in Africa during the other election. That was in 2016. That was interesting to experience from over there. And 2020, I was in Whistler.
Okay.
So it's kind of been a good little tradition for me. I kind of like to watch things from afar.
And by far, you mean as far as you can possibly get from here. Will, you and I are stuck here in the United States. You're in Brooklyn. How's the mood in Brooklyn right now?
Well, I mean, it wasn't like it was the first go. I will say it was different. It was the first go around was profoundly. It was one of the darkest days that we've seen, and I think that there's just an overriding sense of inevitability. It's almost as if no one's saying we can't believe it. We kind of knew it was going to happen, despite wanting to do that. There's just almost all right, head down and move forward, and we're going to hold our breath for the next few years and see what happens. And there's also a nice kind of sense of community of like, well, at least we're in New York.
Yeah. Well, at least you're in New York. I'm in
New York.
I am in am in the heart of it. I am in Texas, where, yeah, the mood is, I don't know, jubilant. I don't really know quite how to describe it because I'm kind of in the sticks, but we're not here to talk about politics today. We're here to talk about travel. Nobody wants to listen
Yeah.
to that. You're getting that 24/7, wherever else you look. So we're not going to talk politics today. We're going to talk about what brought you to Argentina first, Seth? Like, where did this come from? Also, last time we spoke, you were at Whistler. I
Yeah.
believe you've moved since. So talk to me about that.
I've been playing around a lot with like a work and travel.
Yeah.
I took a year off in 2016 and traveled and didn't work. And I was in Southeast Asia and Africa, and I really liked that. I basically did that until I ran out of money. And I moved back to San Francisco and continued back working in the tech industry. And I'd always sort of fantasized about doing that again. And then COVID happened, and I ended up moving to Whistler with my girlfriend at the time. And I kind of figured, like, I don't know if I'll ever make it to South America. That was the only continent hadn't been to at that time. And then with the work remote opportunities, I decided maybe I should capitalize and try to travel and work. So 2022, most of the year I was in Latin America, and I took Spanish classes for years in San Francisco. So I really wanted to kind of put it to work and learn more. So did a lot of traveling around there. I was in Argentina for a bit in March 2022, I think, 2023. And I went to Patagonia and did all that stuff. And I ended up only being in Buenos Aires for 5 days. I wanted to spend more time. But I left to go continue to Patagonia and Ushuaia and like all great places. And I left feeling like, oh, I really need to come back. So I've always been kind of hunting for an opportunity. And I generally only want to go places when the weather's like in like its peak or like getting into like the best weather. So it just lined up perfectly with like being in the shoulder season between the end of good weather in San Francisco, that it's still good all the time, but and then not quite snowboarding time and feeling a little rusty with Spanish. Why not catch a flight to Buenos Aires and hang out for a bit? It's $1,200 a month on
That's
Airbnb for this
crazy.
apartment. It's
That's
got a
crazy.
doorman. It's got a pool. Was just in the pool, getting a tan, and it's in a great area. So seems to make sense for me. I haven't signed a lease yet, so why not?
That is fantastic. You picked the right time to go, and it sounds like
Yeah,
$1,200. That's incredible. It's so affordable. It kind of makes you think, what could my life be if I just moved here?
yeah,
Particularly
yeah,
working
and
remote, right?
yeah, and bringing it back to you, you were just doing some travel in the Adriatic, right?
That's right. That's right. Last time we talked, we were talking about all the many ways the trip could fail. So, my wife and I took a 2-week kind of whirlwind tour of the Adriatic. We started off in Athens, moved our way through the islands in Mykonos and in Santorini, and then popped back up through Dubrovnik for a really short 48 hours, and then on to Italy, where we capped off the whole trip in Lake Como with a little drive over across the border into Switzerland for a day trip. It was amazing. And except the one thing that I was just blown away by, everything worked. Nothing with all the complicated logistics, with all of the many transfers and the positioning flights that we took and the little flights that we took between islands and ferries, nothing failed. So that was the remarkable part. We did also spend some time on an ATV driving around Santorini and somehow didn't die. Despite the many one-way roads and tight alleyways. Similarly, in Italy, didn't run into any of the walls driving around Lake Como in the rental car. And they even gave us the rental car despite not having an international driver's license. That may have been another learning. I did not know you probably need one of those to rent. And I've been told other people have been denied from getting a car. Is that true? Is that your experience as well?
It depends. In Japan, you definitely need the IDP, International Driving Permit, for sure. But Europe, not usually. I rented like a scooter in Italy, but it sort of depends who you're dealing with. But what they are strict about actually is they won't give you like a motorcycle if you don't actually have like the permit for a motorcycle, whereas like some places they don't care. So I'm not sure.
Interesting.
The one the one I know for sure is Japan is where it's a showstopper.
Okay. Yeah. I think we may have just charmed the Hertz rental agent because she happened to have the same birthday as Leah. And we were celebrating her birthday. So that may have been part of it. But we lucked out there. And I think highlight of the trip, this one was unexpected. We banked a bunch of American Express membership reward points. We transferred them over to Emirates. And the whole point of this was kind of to take advantage of these Fifth Freedom routes on the way out so that we got no taxes and fees going from New York to Athens. And then on the way back, we flew back from Milan to JFK on an A380. So Seth, this is my first time on an A380. I know you've flown them before. And we were on the top, and it was really cool. And then about 20 minutes into my flight, I noticed that my seat wouldn't recline. And if you've purchased a business class seat before, this is, one would argue, one of the main functionalities that you desire in a lie flat business class seat. And we tried everything to the point where the staff came and I got up and they were trying to mess with the mechanics underneath. They were so nice about the whole thing. They were so profusely apologetic. And all I could say was like, look, we're just lucky to be up here. Thank you for trying. I mean, it's all good. They were treating us so nicely. And they offered me another seat, farther back. They had one free seat. And then they did something that was the most unexpected. So these Emirates A380s have a shower at the front of the plane. And you can only access the shower. They also have a bar at the back of the plane, which is a really weird and cool thing to do. But you can only access the showers if you're a first-class passenger. The purser of the flight basically said to me, hey, we know this sucks. How would you and your wife like to come up front and take a shower at the front of the plane, which as an aviation geek was like kind of a dream. So we both got shepherded up there. We got our like 10 minutes of being able to shower in a plane. All of this is absurd. None of this should actually exist in real life. But as an aviation geek, that was worth the whole thing. I'll take a broken seat any day to be able to do that. We were able to sip champagne up front. And just enjoy and have fun. And the crew was so nice about it. And then Emirates at the end gave us both 20,000 miles as compensation for the broken seat. So now we have some more Emirates flying to do, but that was definitely the unexpected highlight of the trip.
See, I recently got married. Thank you.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
We're doing round 2 of the wedding. My wife is from Brazil. So we're going to Sao Paulo in a couple of weeks to celebrate with her side of the family. And thank you, the Amex Platinum, with their very generous sign-up bonus. I decided to treat myself. I'm going to fly down Delta One. Finally, it's like, nice. This will be great. And I don't want to sleep. I don't want. Nope. I'm going to be up the whole thing. I'm going to order everything I can order. If the seat goes back, that's fine. I'm going to be sitting. Excuse me, another one for 9 hours. I'm going to get every minute I can out of that thing. Sleeping is not what I'll be doing.
That's exactly right. It seems like such a waste to do. You got champagne on tap. They treat you like royalty. Why would you want to sleep through that? I don't care if it's 3 a.m.
I slept very well for $6,000.
No, I want to enjoy this. That's right.
I'll have to hear how it is and what the wine selection is like. That's like my favorite part of like flying up there. It's like trying what wines they have on board.
Wow. I think it's just this ability to live a life that we don't normally get to live. For me, I honestly, having kids, sitting in an economy class seat for 8 hours is a luxury to not have without your children. It is really incredible. I will just sit and watch an iPad, and that's luxury. So to be catered to and given nice food and have people be nice to you, so lovely. But and wait, so when is that trip coming up for you?
November 30th is the wedding, 29th is the wedding. So I'll be going down a few days before that.
Unbelievable.
Oh, you're getting married down in Sao Paulo?
This is a destination wedding. How many folks do you have coming to this thing?
Well, it's right. We had a Brooklyn wedding in October for both of our families, and then more immediate. We actually had some friends who came out from Whistler. But then the majority of Emmy's family is in Brazil, and so they just they couldn't make it. It would be too complicated. So we're doing a largely Brazilian wedding. And my family will come down, and a close friend is coming down to hang out. But so it's one wedding spread across several weeks. It started and it will wrap up in Brazil. So kind of thinking of it as one big party instead of 2 separate occasions. But it's gonna be fun.
And are the caipirinhas just gonna be flowing abundantly, I'm hoping, for this wedding.
Yeah. No, there'll be no shortage of caipirinhas.
Cachaça all over the place.
Cachaça all over the place. But Seth, interestingly, very little wine. But I
No,
learned that's
not
a very not acceptable, but a very uncommon. It's not super common to have wine served. Cocktails are the move, and so we actually like my parents. We like our wine, so we had to go. It was a big deal to we had to go somewhere else to be like, we're going to get our wine, had to buy our own wine to have it brought in. And we're like, how many bottles should we get? They're like, 6 will be fine.
sick.
There are 5 Armstrongs going to be there. We need at least 100 for us.
Yeah.
I love it.
Is the wine okay? Just question: is the wine from South America or what
Good
country of origin?
Yeah,
did you go for?
we
Just
actually we
out of
settled on
curiosity.
3. We settled on Portuguese white, a Brazilian sparkling, and a Brazilian red. And they were pretty good. Actually, the Brazilian sparkling was really nice. The Portuguese white is a little more oaky than I would tend to do, but it's of the options we had, we're like, this is the safest bet and the biggest crowd pleaser. But yeah, it was a different scene.
Well, I actually learned what an enophile Seth is. That was the other news we didn't tell the listeners up front. Is that Seth and I finally got to meet in person. So our backstory, Will, is that we met in the kind of founder dating, online dating universe that is YC co-founder matching. And now I've now known each other for months and have started this podcast, but we had never met in person. And so recently, on a recent trip out to the Bay Area to kick off this accelerator that my startup is starting, Seth and I got to have a lovely dinner at the House of Prime Rib in San Francisco with Seth's friend Marco, and we just had a blast. But I didn't know the extent to which Seth knows his shit about wine, and had the sommelier coming over and giving us all these options that I had no idea what they were. He's like, "What do you want? Do you want the real?" He do. And I was like, "Oh," but this man knew, and it was lovely.
Yeah, Seth, you hit me to The Prisoner, which I hadn't heard about, and actually they have it in one of my local little shops, and like $1 per value. That's a good cab.
It's pretty good. I like the Saldo, and you don't see it everywhere. One of my friends was a distributor, and I'd be like, "Oh, do you carry Saldo?" And he would just start talking trash because, well, they didn't carry it, of course, so that's why. But I think it's not as widely distributed, but at the same time, it's pretty available. Yeah, the wine in Argentina is pretty good. I'm a big fan, actually. But this isn't a wine podcast, so I don't want to get too distracted. I was about to just start talking about wine for like a while.
That's gonna have to be the bonus episode. But speaking of getting inebriated and making bad decisions, let's segue here to our second segment of the episode. This is our fail fast segment today, where we're going to talk about things that we wish we had known before we jumped into this entrepreneurship journey. And today's topic is, I don't know if it's a controversial topic or not, is tar pit ideas. And so tar pit ideas, if you're not familiar with them, Seth, do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and where that kind of emerged?
Sure. It's kind of analogous to dinosaurs in tar pits. It's something that looks attractive and it sucks you in, and then you kind of get stuck there and die. So like the really short, like Cliff Notes version is it's like a common term in the industry or with VCs of like, it looks attractive, you get sucked into it, your friends encourage you to do it, and it's sexy and it's, something you like, but then it might not be the best business idea. I mean, I have my own opinions about the concept of a tar pit idea too, but that's the general idea. It's like, I guess there's this term of these ideas that are like really sexy and like pull people in, but then you kind of get like sucked into it.
Yeah. And so all these dinosaurs are congregating at the edge of this tar pit, this really attractive place with all these really interesting ideas. And then they slowly get just sucked into the tar pit and they die. And so this is where great ideas go to die. Will, what's your take on this?
Well, my question is, I want to make sure that I also understand the concept. Am I correct in understanding that a tar pit is referring to something that is inherently a consumer product?
Well, not necessarily. Now we'll talk about that in a sec. So I think there is a correlation here, but maybe it's not a one-to-one. But that's part of the reason that I think it's interesting to have the three of us here together to talk about this, because we're all building consumer applications and businesses. And so one question that I have for both of you is, my take on this is that it's absolutely right that what they're suggesting is that the supply of people who are willing to or interested in building consumer applications specifically, because these are sexier ideas, is really high, and it's really, really competitive. And that's what makes it so hard to survive in the B2C world, particularly with these really more sexy ideas. Whereas if you were building a B2B SaaS application, you might have a greater chance of success because there are fewer people who maybe know that niche world of building. My question to both of you is there a flip side to that, where by building in an attractive area or something that is more interesting, that you're actually able to attract more, whether it's interest from investors or interest from people who might want to build with you, or just buzz in general? And then the follow-up is, would you even be doing what you're doing if it weren't for something you're passionate about that has a consumer application?
Okay, I want to answer first. I think it's been helpful. Like, working in travel tech has been sexy. I've had people interested to help me and get involved, mainly because they're really interested in the product. I'm really passionate about the product. If I was working on something I really didn't care about at all, like, I probably wouldn't be anymore. Because, I'm having a good time, but, sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's easier. But what really keeps me going is like how much I like the product. I don't know. I don't think I would have as much fun building shovelware, like tools that other people use to build stuff. Pretty boring. But what they said about the gold rush, that's how a lot of people got rich. And I can totally get why, investors want you to go with a B2B. It's like a quicker win, right? You can get it, get your customers, sell it. But also there are merits to the point. So I think, it's not a total dichotomy, but I really like travel tech. But if I was going to go do everything different, like I started working on this idea because I was traveling and I really like it. But let's say you remove me from that and you sat me in a room and you're like, okay, Seth, you got to kind of come up with an idea. If I had no inspiration whatsoever, didn't have this idea for Abasquatto in this travel app, and I was forced to come up with like the best way to make money in an app, it would be construction technology, which is, I think, an interesting product because, hey, I work in the construction tech industry now, and you use it to build real things. Whereas you couldn't pay me enough money to ever work at an email marketing technology company ever. I'm so disinterested, but I'm really happy with Abasquatto and like working in travel tech and being able to do something that I really love and help solve problems for consumers. It's harder for sure, though. I'd say B2C is harder. This is my opinion.
I absolutely resonate with that feeling of, would I be able to put my whole heart and soul into this thing if it weren't something I'm passionate about? Similarly, travel is my thing, and that's where it was really natural and easy to come up with the idea, but then easy to really pour my heart and soul into it. Well, I know music is that thing for you. So do you have that same kind of feeling as Seth, that if you were to sit in a room and come up with an idea entirely on your own, that it might be different, or this would be it no matter what?
Well, this was it. I mean, this is my idea that's been on my, but it's like passion doesn't quite fit the bill here. I mean, music has been my entire life and my livelihood for my entire life. I've started a, like, by all accounts, pretty successful music teaching company here in NYC, which, like, kind of the goal. I mean, I kind of think about the ski bum analogy. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I wasn't like, I know I'm going to do this. Like, I really like music and I'm just going to keep playing. And it's like, all right, let me figure out what I can do that's going to allow me to keep playing. But I also don't really have any interest in being super bohemian. Like, I like to ski. It's like, okay, so I have this problem where I really like music, but I really like to ski. So how the hell am I going to be able to ski, afford to ski, and still play music all the time? And and it's like, it's kind of the three big questions of like, what am I good at? What does the world need? and what do I enjoy? And for me, the answer lied in teaching. Like, I'm a good piano player. Like, I'm a very good piano player. Does the world need me? Am I good enough that the world, like, I really feel that the world needs me to perform piano? No. Like, there's other people who should be doing that. Can I put on a good show? Yes. Thank you very much. But is that really where I'm like, this is what I have to offer the world? It's like, no, it's part of it, but that's not it. What do I enjoy? Like, I love music, and I have always enjoyed teaching because teachers have been such an important part of my life. I mean, my musical mentors have shaped my life in such a profound way. So it's a bit of paying that back, but like it's just also seeing how profound that relationship can be. So the answer has always been like, I mean, since I was a kid, I was basically like, I mean, I remember my first jazz mentor being like, so what are you going to do with this? Like, he's like, you're good enough. So like, what are you going to do? I was like, yeah. And then, it's like 13. I was like, I think it's too much of a struggle to, try to make a living performing. I think I'll go into teaching. As a 13-year-old kid, I vividly remember that. And that came true. It's like, I did a lot of performing. I did touring. I did the whole, like, being in a van and sleeping on floors and not playing a gig and not really knowing where you're going to crash that night and, like, all this stuff and all kinds of gigs. And I love it. And it's fun, but it's like, it's just not a thing, right? And then, so I started this teaching company out of, what am I good at? What is necessary? Because there are big holes. I was like, there's a lot of education that's missing. Musicians are getting screwed over left and right. All my peers, let's start this company. And so I still do that. And then with this app, it's really just a continuation of that. Like, I've kind of done the thing that I wanted to do, and it's reached essentially where it's reached about all it can be without becoming something different, which is, it's a very high, what I offer right now, the teaching company I run is very boutique, very high end, very hands-on. And it's, it's not a scalable thing. And I was like, but we need to do something bigger. And so the app thing was the next. I was like, so what is next for me as an instructor? And what do I think is next for music education? What can I do to be more profoundly impactful on more people? And that was always sort of the goal. It's like, I want to have the biggest impact I can on as many students as possible, a really life-changing impact like my mentors have for me. I did that, and like, okay, I've done something, I've established that. I want more. And so what the app is has been I think this is the best path forward. And I think whatever happens with this app, I'm stuck in that. Like, I'm in this industry. I mean, music is my thing, and I think I'll learn. I mean, I've learned tons about all kinds of other things, but trying to crack that egg is going to be something I'm going to be trying to solve probably forever, regardless
I love
of how it's done.
that breakdown of something that I am good at, something that the world needs, and something I enjoy. And maybe the thing with a tar pit idea is that it's something that the world just doesn't need or doesn't need more of, right? And so and I don't know that everybody can necessarily get 3 out of 3. If you're working on 2 out of 3, that might be a viable idea. It might be a viable business. It might be even something that could be venture scale. But it seems like if you have all 3 lined up, you really have that magic fit of something that is just perfectly aligned. The stars are aligned, and this is going to go somewhere.
Well, there's kind of there's a saying in the arts, like, there's a great article in the New Yorker many years ago about a writing teacher who was telling her students, if you can do something else, do it. And not to be discouraging, the message of the piece was, not like, oh, this is a tough business, this is it was almost a plea for, if you can even imagine doing anything else in the world, please go and do that. Like, you're studying creative writing. If you can imagine yourself being a lawyer, please go be a lawyer. Please go into finance. Please do something else, because it's hard. And it's because it's so hard. And you just can't, if you can even see something else, go in that direction. And I think that I've kind of been on that direction of what I've been doing and what I continue to do. I just can't see myself doing anything else. And I'd like to. I wish I could have a normal job sometimes. I wish I could have a damn salary and insurance and not, and still I got to practice. What the hell is that? Yeah, I think that's sort of, that's something that I've certainly learned from being in the arts that has translated to this sort of endeavor and previous endeavors. It's just, if you can see yourself doing something else, do it, because it's freaking hard. And if you can't, you kind of tend to figure out a way, I think. And I've seen that with a lot of musicians, like, who maybe aren't even the best musician, but like, that's all they can do. And they've done their thing, and they've kind of made it work.
I think it's good to go for like the harder path. But I think that's a really interesting story, like you said, that your teacher and mentor told you. But having a day job, that's not as interesting and exciting. I don't know. There's trade-offs.
Yeah. Paycheck is great. Knowing when your next paycheck
Definitely.
is always great.
A paycheck would
Pretty
be
nice.
fantastic. I resonate a lot with that feeling. Well, man, if only I had that steady paycheck. And it's clearly just a different type of life. And look, I think this is all about sharing things that we wish we had known. I think there's a big pressure in the startup community, whether it's through accelerators or through reading, to be building the next big thing, the next thing that is has a B in front of the valuation, and that thing might not be the thing that you're passionate about, or that you're even the right person to be building. And I highly encourage those who are watching to check out the two videos that Dalton Caldwell and Michael Seibel from Y Combinator have put out on the topic of Tarpit ideas. I think they're actually in the last few months. And the first one was so, I think, popular and maybe had so many follow-up questions attached to it that they had to publish a second video talking about this and saying that Tarpit ideas are only a small subset of bad ideas, but this is something that, whether it's a belief that the world should work differently, some sort of arbitrage, or it's too good to be true, these are the different types of tar pit ideas. And I think the big thing that I wish I had known is just going into this whole thing eyes wide open and knowing before you start what you're getting into. Any other thoughts about that, or how that resonates with you both building a B2C app?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, go Seth. Yeah.
You go ahead, Bo.
No, I just think, it's hard to say because I don't have, aside from running like a boutique small business and, running it well for the last few years and like kind of customer service being our thing, this is a totally new world for me. And I've had to learn a lot. And like, I wish I knew everything that I knew now 2 years ago. And I guarantee that I wish what I learned 2 years from now, that like, I had a conversation yesterday with the first person we actually went to be like, hey, I think we need money. And that conversation was just like mind blowing. Like, I wish I had that conversation a year ago, but there's no way I could have had that conversation a year ago. Like that conversation would have happened. I couldn't have had that conversation on Friday. It took an extra weekend of work to like get that. So it's kind of hard to say like what I wish I had known. There's a lot I wish I had known. I can't really say there's stuff there's stuff I wish I had done differently, but I can't really say that because I didn't know. And it's been sort of a vision that's been evolving. I wish it evolved faster. I wish we moved faster. And I think like, if not this idea, the next idea that will probably be somewhat related, it will be faster. And like, I'll know how to do it better, but it took experience to get it there. Kind of not an answer, but, there's a lot I wish I knew. But hard to be super specific other than like, I wish I hadn't worked with that guy. That's one thing. I wish I knew that.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, I don't know what else I could have done too much differently. I don't know. There's a lot to think about there. It's difficult. One thing I have like things I wish I had, but I don't. In terms of execution, I think I've done pretty good. One thing I'd like is like I've been on the hunt for like a marketing co-founder for a while, and it's difficult, pretty selective, and no one really was able to fit the bill, and it's just different. Like I've been doing it myself, and I have some skills in marketing. I used to run a little like hat business in university, which is like such a funny thing to say. I feel like everyone's got these t-shirt business stories, but it's a different skill set, and B, I've just been doing engineering for so long. It's difficult to know. It's a lot harder to suss out who's good at marketing. And we noticed that even working in startups, like I've worked at successful startups that like they would have a new market like CMO like every 3 months, and then they'd find one that worked. Like you don't know. They can say whatever, but you actually don't know how they're gonna perform for at least 3 months. Whereas engineering, like the engineering interview process, I think is also broken, but you can tell more quickly. It's it's a technical thing. You can see what have you built, look at the past work. And with marketing, maybe, but there's one thing I really learned is 0 to 1 And B2B and B2C marketing, like there's a lot of difference there. There's a lot of people with a lot of good marketing experience, but one thing I've noticed that is short in supply is B2C marketers for a 0 to 1. Even if you're a B2C marketer for like a large brand, they have money and they take the spend. And the way they grow the business typically is it's spend on user acquisition, like advertising, essentially. But when you're just starting out, especially bootstrap, the strategy is completely different when you're going to market. And there's not a lot of people with experience like that. Like you could be the best marketing person ever. You have an MBA, you've been working at all these big companies, you have great experience, but your experience is in these big companies and spending the money. So someone that might have all this great experience, they might be dying to get some experience in the startup B2C world because they don't actually have any experience dealing with that. And they might not actually be very good at it. We don't know. So it's interesting. Like if I was a marketer in that person's shoes, I would definitely also be like kind of chomping at the bit to get experience doing that. And that's what I love about working with startups is like you kind of get on the ground floor and you get to set things up and do things and build the data model and build the plan. You get to do stuff that you never got to do because you came in at a later stage in a company and that's already been done. And honestly, this is kind of the fun part. But yeah, that's where it's hard. Like how many people are out there that have done a 0 to 1 go to market strategy successfully and are out there looking for the next thing? They're out there, but there's not that many.
I can resonate with this. Was also just listening to a talk from David Park, who's the founder of something called Jenny AI and went through the accelerator we're currently going through. And he was talking about finding a marketing person and almost exactly what you're saying, Seth, but around finding the right person. Maybe they actually have no experience at all in that area. And you're looking for somebody who is completely really new and willing to think in entirely different ways about how to approach this. And so he specifically does not look for somebody who has like a long marketing background. And he's also in the B2C space. So I think you're absolutely right. It's hard to find, it's hard to look at somebody's CV and know that they'll be successful in the world doing something that is so different. So we're actually going to dig a little bit more here, Will, into your background and your journey to becoming a founder. Will, the first thing I think we'd love to hear from you, you're the founder of MeTempo. So this is an app that helps find people, teachers, to teach them music, and you yourself are a music teacher. Talk to us a little bit about how you got there. I know you shared some of your journey in the last portion, but what was your journey to becoming this founder of MeTempo?
The problem was just that in education in general, specifically music things, like people have two options, and it's to do live learning or it's to do something pre-recorded. That's pretty much it. And both of them have a lot of problems. Like as someone who's been running a successful live learning thing, there's like things that I'm really tired of dealing with. Pre-recorded learning, as someone who teaches live lessons all the time, pre-recorded stuff has its place. It's great. I think inherently education has to have a feedback loop. It's two-sided because it's two people at least learning. It's the student and the teacher, and they both feed off of each other, and that's what makes education successful. And I had a reputation for being an exceptionally good teacher, especially with really pain in the ass kids who are like, just really, really difficult. And like, and somehow I can get them into it and get them engaged. And it comes from being constantly creative with how I deal with them. There's a lot of really bad teachers out there. There's excellent teachers, but there's a lot of crap teachers. And I think that became painfully obvious to me during the pandemic. When I saw companies like mine fall left and right, I was like, man, that's a real problem. And the pandemic was a big thing of like, education is so far behind. Like it needs to be innovating. Like it was really frustrating to see how many kids got left behind and how many teachers struggled because yes, it was difficult, but it was also like, it's still teaching. And the big issue with that for teachers is like, for me, it's like, okay, I can teach 20 hours a week running around to people's houses. And that's about it, just time wise, let alone just being freaking exhausted because it's 20 hours of being like, it's not passive. It's 20 hours of high intensity kind of thing. And I was like, that's just one, I don't want to be doing that. forever. So like, so how do you scale that? Like, how do you scale personalized learning? How do you scale one-on-one relationships and one-on-one teaching? And I thought back to a guy out of Boston, a really renowned music educator named Charlie Bonakas, who he had a wait list for years of people wanting to study with him. Everyone, people who played with Miles Davis wanted to study with Charlie. Everyone wanted to study with Charlie. And like, this is the old school correspondence courses, like kind of what happened to these. It was like, there's something there. Immediately saw like, all right, this can be done way better, really easily. Let's start testing it out. Built some stuff to test it out. I was like, yes, this works. Let's start building software that can actually get this to scale, and then just start playing around with what this could actually look like, how we're going to make this efficient. The problem is, how do you scale one-to-one learning? How do you scale personalized relationships? And then looking at like, what are other potentially, like, what are other possibilities? Like, what would be like, where could this potentially go? Because like, this is education and this is what I know so well, but where else could this be applied? Because good teachers are good teachers, and people want to learn, and people want connection. So that's sort of the origin story, and that's how we got to where we're going. I want to be able to do what I'm good at and more of it. And I know there's a lot of other teachers and students who would benefit from something, from the same.
Yeah, that's really cool. I actually didn't know the full origin story. I've actually been doing Spanish lessons here, just like in person, 3 times a week. And I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think there is something to be said about the relationship of both people learning from each other. And it's hard to replace it.
I fundamentally agree with you. There's something magical about what happens in person, or we're having that feedback loop where, I don't know if edX or any of the MOOCs were the big thing a while ago, whether it's Coursera or Udacity, where there was a big question: is it going to replace in-person learning or learning with a human counterpart, maybe even if it's virtual? And it sounds like what you're saying is no, there will never be that feedback loop.
Well, no, and I think there's something else that's really interesting, because like there's AI, like with AI changing every day. Like, AI is really changing the game, but I think there is still something, like, there's no doubt, like, it can do anything. But I really think there's a study recently about how much people dislike when AI tries to be empathetic.
It's kind of like the uncanny valley in a sense.
It's very much like that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like, that's something that I think there is a balance there that can be figured out. And that's our goal, is to use the technology to make the teacher's job really easy and to make the teacher better at their job. And that's not
so
that
don't
hard.
be empathetic.
Well, don't let the AI be that. Don't let the AI be empathetic. Like, that's what the teacher's for. And music is a place where it's like playing around with, like, okay, could we have a machine tell you if you're playing something right? Yes. Like, actually doesn't exist right now. Like, kind of, but like, yeah, I'm sure someone could figure out, like, yes, you're playing the right notes, you're whatever. But music is such a personal thing. Like, if you're, it's you're expressing your emotions, that I think people would be pretty weirded out if a computer's like, yes, I was very moved by your third movement. The hell you mean you were moved?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And just finding that balance. Like, in education, there's either live or there's pre-recorded, and there's really not much in between. And then I kind of started realizing, well, it's not even just that. There's kind of either tech or not tech. And like, not a whole lot in between. Like, yeah, there's LMSs and there's stuff like that. But like, a platform that combines the best of both is kind of like, but for music, I'm like, it doesn't exist yet, really. I mean, kind of. Basically everything's either just, everything's tech, or it's just sign up for live lessons, or my pre-recorded thing, or, plug in your MIDI keyboard into your computer. Who the hell is going to do that? And we'll tell you if you're playing the notes right, or something like that. I mean, some things can listen to you, but it's not.
So I guess there's this big market available, is what it sounds like.
I hope so. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, it depends on what the market actually is. Like, right now we're targeting adults. In the US specifically, like, who play an instrument, who, have a certain amount of income, because like, we are paying for instructors. So while it's, the month of the lessons is it's like about what a teacher in New York charges for one lesson. You get, a month of course, constant counsel coaching, basically. That's our target. And like, there's about, kids would be we'd have to build things a little bit differently to go, work with children specifically. Also, that's just difficult. thing to do. There's a lot of adults in the U.S. who play an instrument, and I think there's a lot more adults who probably would if they had like a really easy way to do it. But I think on a bigger scale thing, it's like, who wants to learn something and who wants to connect them with someone that they're learning from?
Well, what would you say is the biggest challenge you're facing right now? And I don't think you mentioned how long you've been building this, but what stage are you at, and what's the big rock in front of you?
The big rock. So it's been slow. So it's been like 2 years. There was like round one, which is like kind of testing things out. It's been really like a year and a half of really building this current thing. Figuring out a clear path forward for traction has been difficult. And I think we figured it out. I think we have a clear path forward. We're like, you know what, we can at least spend a lot of time working on this to see if it works, to get like an initial traction thing going. Figuring out the a model that actually works, like the finance stuff. Like that's like, I've had to learn a lot about all that, and I'm still teaching my 20 students a week running Will You Learn. But it's been hard to get there because we haven't had like a real clear vision of a strong path forward. And now we have that. And I wish we had had that sooner, because it seems so obvious what we've kind of decided our plan to be, that we're all like, why the hell didn't we think of that before? We didn't need the tech to be this good to do that. We could have started doing that a while ago, but now we have a really good platform. So it does make it a little bit easier to do what we're going to do.
That's great. Also, you mentioned Will You Learn. That's the name of your one-on-one company. I've always thought that was the most like clever name of all time, since your name's Will, which I'm sure I hope everyone listening gets that or got that, but yeah.
And I live in Williamsburg. I have a problem. I'm a narcissist.
I didn't think about that.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like you just have so many good punny options. Well, I was just meeting up with a friend of mine who's another NYU grad, and there's something about NYU grads. And I know you're a master's student there, but there's just something about NYU grads where you said the business side, that's not necessarily your focus. But it's just so great to talk to someone who's building something that's really solving problems for people, and that you're pouring your heart and soul into it. And I know you said maybe it's not passion, this is your life's work, but it's just really cool to get to talk to another alum, but also somebody who's just out there doing your thing and building school.
What year were you?
I graduated in 2010. So
okay, cool. we just
missed overlapping. And now I need to know, Williamsburg, where's your favorite spot out in Williamsburg? If you were to go out on a Friday night, where you go?
I mean, on a Friday night, I'm usually pretty dead after a whole night of TV, or on my way to Vermont. If it's the winter, I'm on my way to Vermont. So I have this sort of bizarre, almost Seinfeld-esque situation here, where my little brother and his wife live just across the street. So we have almost an open door policy.
Okay.
So we have these family dinners, which is like my favorite thing. Which I love it. We just we cook. He's a great chef. I love to cook too, and we'll cook. That will be most likely where I'll be on a Friday night. Sunday night, though, I got to give a shout out. So there's a little bar right around the corner called Basic, which has one of the super long running jazz jam sessions. It's been going on for years. And actually the bar changed owners, and they're like, keep the jam session. And they did. And it's such a great, it's such a New York thing. Cause I walk out the door and you just get to go sit out, have a beer, sit in, play some tunes with this phenomenal musician. And it's
it's so cool.
That's just it. That's why you're here. And it's to me, it's this is why every now and then I'm there's rats everywhere, there's trash everywhere, everything's expensive and it's horrible. But then I'm I have to leave. If I don't leave, I can't stay here. And then I go up to Vermont for 2 days, and I'm New York is home.
Y'all heard it here for our New York listeners. You can skip the rats, and you can go to Basic on a Sunday night and catch some tunes, or even see Will play. So
got it.
Check Will out at Basic, or go to Will You Learn. Is it
willyoulearn.com and MeTempo.com.
Will, it's been such a pleasure having you on the pod today. Thank you for joining. Thanks for sharing some wisdom. Seth?
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
All right, y'all. We will see you next time in the next episode. Thank you for joining and listening to us. This has been the P1P2 pod. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.